My name is Walter Sleeth. I have lived in Atherton for 23 years. My family, including my wife and grandsons, aged 11 and 8, often use the current library. My wife, Judy Sleeth, the founder and current executive director of Art in Action, joins me in support of Measure F to build a new library in Holbrook-Palmer Park. The current building is an antique, reminding me of the small library in the upstate New York village of 3,000 residents where I grew up. We should not have to continue here in Atherton to depend on this almost 60-year-old non-earthquake safe converted home. Our children need a library that will provide the services they need in our current technological world. Our adults need a place where they can easily access information and services. About a year ago, the possibility of a new library came to my attention. In response to the many notices issued by the city clerk for community input, I attended several sessions in the summer and fall of 2011. Now to hear those opposing Measure F state that there was no opportunity to offer input to the legally constituted subcommittee of the council and say that alternative sites were not exhaustively studied is just plain wrong. It is upsetting that some of those individuals take such liberty with what in fact happened. Much time and effort went into seeking input and having the independent consultant analyze the alternative sites. Many of those now demonstrating such vituperation never showed up at the meetings where input was sought. The individuals who gave of their time to try to determine what was best for the community are to be praised, not criticized. A library in Holbrook-Palmer Park is not a new issue here in Atherton. In February 1959, a report by Louis J. Kroger and Associates stated on the basis of a survey of every third household, quote, "The single greatest interest expressed in response to the questionnaire was for library service." Quote, "Those opposed to the site recommendation of the independent consulting firm LSA seem to believe that 1, the peacefulness of the Holbrook-Palmer Park will be lessened, and that 2, if the no's prevail, the funds will be available for other uses. They are blinded by their own obstructionism. Clearly the park is a lovely bucolic piece of land. The new library will allow the peacefulness of the park to continue. The critics have failed to do their homework on uses preferred by Mrs. Palmer, who gave the site. The will and the probate court documents make it very plain that Mrs. Palmer's intention was to allow for a, quote, building thereon for public museum or auditorium purposes, which is consistent with the use of said property as a public recreational park, end quote. It has been independently determined in the environmental report that neither parking nor traffic issues are really significant, certainly no more than all the traffic at times in the Station Lane intersection. The current funds available, about $5.5 million, are legally required to be used for library purposes, thus negating other creative uses suggested. Soon after Proposition 13 was passed in 1978, an agreement was made to fund San Mateo County Library System with a small percentage of the property taxes collected. Another and separate bucket was provided for the individual school districts. The individual jurisdictions on their own do not have the authority to make changes in the allocation under these historical agreements. By voting yes on Measure F, we can build a brand new library with the most up-to-date materials and technologies with no additional cost to taxpayer. That's because the funding for construction and operation of a new library are already in place. Building a new library at the site of the existing main house will allow for a quieter library and connect the library's program to the outdoor areas of the park. A new library will complement the other activities in the park, for instance, after-school athletics with academic activities. In addition, the library will continue to serve as a place for community events, replacing the outdated and costly main house, which, contrary to some public perceptions, has been a drain on the town's budget. Goals for the library include an extremely flexible structure with movable shelving and the most modern building infrastructure. The maintenance budget for the new library itself will give budget relief for upkeep at the park. While the issue of high-speed rail remains uncertain, there are people close to the politics involved that insist that whether it is high-speed rail or electrification of Caltrain, the event will happen. Putting a library in the town center would be a fool's errand. The current location, or one north on Station Lane as part of the town center area, is not an optimal long-term solution to a most important infrastructure improvement for our town. I encourage all of you to vote yes on Measure F. It is the right thing to do for the future of our community. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Paul Tonelli, former Park Commissioner for the town of Atherton, and we urge you to vote no on Proposition F. Atherton does not need a library in beautiful Holbrook-Palmer Park. Now, the people in favor of the library in the park would have you believe that the park would be good for the library, but the reality is the library would not be good for the park. They say focus on the facts, but if you look at their statements, it's impossible to find the facts. The devil is in the details, and they don't want you to know the details. That's why their statements are so vague. Let's take a look point by point. They say the environmental impact report recommends a 10,000 square foot library. What they don't tell you is that this is nearly 3 times the size of the main building that it would be replacing. And the footprint of the new library would include an area that is currently open space around the main building. They say that funds are already designated solely for library purposes, including construction of a new library. What they don't tell you is that the library doesn't have to be built in the park. Those funds can be used to upgrade, remodel, or replace the current library in its current location. All of the upgrades and services, books, computers, and learning programs they talk about can also be achieved with an upgraded library in its current location. They say a library in the park would enhance open space, but how is this possible? The new library is bigger, and it would be built to provide services for up to 16,000 people in the area. A larger building, more people, more traffic, more cars, more parking needed, all add up to less open space and a more impacted park. As a former member of the Park Commission, I know the land donated to Atherton that created Holbrook-Palmer Park was done so in accordance with Silas Palmer's will to, quote, create a public recreation park. A larger building, serving a number of people that is twice the population of Atherton, infringes on the very recreation for which the park was intended. They propose better traffic safety. Don't believe it. Atherton has no commitment that the Joint Powers Authority would approve the use of donor funds for any traffic mitigation. A library in the park would increase traffic on Watkins Avenue. It would require a new traffic light at Watkins and Middlefield Road, and the traffic plan would include taking land in the front yard of one of our neighbors to install a new right turn lane on Watkins Avenue at El Camino. There has been no guarantee that we won't lose more open space in the future. Parking estimations are incomplete, and there is always possibility we could sacrifice even more open space for parking, which should be dedicated for recreation. Do we really need more asphalt and concrete when the park was designed as a bucolic arboretum provided for public recreation? Also, you have to think about how a new library in the park would affect annual community events, such as our Easter egg hunt and our music in the park. How would the park be able to accommodate those days where the library is open, Little League games are scheduled, and family picnics and parties are going on? They say a new library will stop financial losses Atherton has been suffering on park rentals. What they don't tell you is that our town manager had a plan in place for a third party to manage park rentals that would have actually provided a profit for Atherton. That plan was conveniently ignored in favor of furthering the agenda of a library in the park. I cannot urge you strongly enough to vote no on Proposition F. The Joint Powers Authority would have you believe that a new library in the park is needed to provide services for up to 16,000 people in the area. What they don't consider is that we have a beautiful library in Menlo Park and a remodeled library in Redwood City, each less than 2 miles away for use by the surrounding community. They don't mention it because Menlo Park and Redwood City are not part of the JPA. These two libraries are more than adequate to provide the services needed. A new, larger library in Holbrook-Palmer Park is not needed. What is needed is a comprehensive master plan that would incorporate a new library as part of an overall town center. The current library funds could be used to build a new library as part of that town center. By voting no on F, you can open up the possibility of creating even more open space instead of taking up valuable park space at Holbrook-Palmer Park. We could possibly create yet another park-like setting with a new town center that incorporates a new library. I don't think I'm overstating things when I say that this is a vote that will affect our way of life in Atherton for generations to come. It is our responsibility to protect what valuable open space we have in our town and in our beautiful park. To protect Holbrook-Palmer Park, to maintain our open spaces, and to open opportunity for creative, organized solutions in the future, we urge you, vote no on Measure F.